One of the biggest mistakes people make when coding in Java and using arrays is trying to access an element at an index that is out of the bounds of the array. So what that means is you're trying to access something that is past the size of your array. So for example, if you have an array of size 5 and the indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you know you can't access the index at location 5 or the element at index location 6 and on. So we can only do from 0 to 1 less than the size of the array. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how this might happen in our code. And if we do make this mistake in our code, what you'll see is you'll get a runtime error. So that means while the code is executing, it'll fail and it'll stop running because there is an error on whatever line of the code was trying to access something beyond the bounds of the array. So for example, if I have an array of size 8, this is totally fine. We've done it before. We're just accessing the first element. Although the first element might not have a value yet because we didn't set it, the default will just be 0 for integers. So you'll see that this code will just print out a 0 here. However, if I try to access something at location 8 and run the program, you'll see we'll get an error here while the code is trying to run. And it's going to tell us that the error is on line 4. So here it is, we get a array index out of bounds exception, and you see that our code exited status 1. This means that there was an error and we had to leave the code, leave the program. It just didn't work. So we know this is wrong because you can't have an index at 8. Remember, we start indexing arrays from 0, so what it'll actually be is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 0 at the front. So these are 8 numbers. The size is 8, but the index 8 is too much. It's too big of a number because the biggest number we can go to here for indexing is actually 7. This is just a rule in arrays of Java. They always start at 0. So we can also make this mistake with our for loops. So you know we've traversed through these loops before using code like this. And then we went ahead and put an I here. Now this is totally fine, we've seen this before, but if you were to accidentally put an equal sign here, you'll see that this will give us that same error. And it's because when we get to I is 7, it's fine, we get 7 here, but when we increment I to 8, 8 is still less than or equal to array.length because it's equal to, it could be either equal or less than here for this thing to be true. And then we'll try to access 8 here, which we saw earlier was not allowed. So you'll see the code will actually run. The first loops, the first 8 loops are fine, but once we get into that 8 for I, which would actually be the 9th iteration of this loop, then we will get our array index out of bounds exception and our code will fail.